Everybody, keep your spine erect, sit comfortably, eyes gently closed. Shift your eye gaze to the third eye or the center of the eyebrows, the Jyotishmati, the light of awareness within. Take a deep breath and exhale. Let's begin today's session with the opening chant. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to the weekly Satsang. Now, we've started on the journey of exploration of SamkhyaYoga. Samkhya, the right perception or the absolute perception of the truth. Samkhya believes that truth is absolute, truth is one. It's not a perception of the truth. It's not the subjective of the many truths, but the truth is absolute. So what you've done in the previous session is we started on the exploration of the Samkhya to what is Samkhya and then what is not Samkhya. And then we're going to do a quick review of that. And then today our focus is more about why do we need to pursue the journey of the Samkhya? Why we need to take on the journey towards we get to repost on the absolute truth. And then we're going to look at the one important dimension of the Samkhya, which is about who am I? So the truth is very much based on knowing our true identity. Who am I? And then in the subsequent session, we're going to look at the second dimension of the absolute truth, which is the Prakriti. Where am I? In the first Bhagavad Gita series, we started our exploration on the three existential questions, which is who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? Where am I? And then what do I do about it? The whole Bhagavad Gita is all about understanding the setting and then doing the right thing about it. How do we joyfully navigate through the situations that we are in? So far, we went through a deep understanding and study of the Karma Yoga that answered the third question, which is about where am I, why am I here, and then how to navigate the situation. And so we are now going, and in the first series, we briefly touched upon, we did an executive summary of who am I and where am I. Samkhya Yoga kind of gets into the deeper understanding of who am I, the self. So that, let me share my screen. So we'll begin with the opening Bhagavad Gita Dhyana Shloka. Pardaya pratibodhitam bhagavata narayanena swayam vyasena grahitam purana muninam madhye mahabharatam advaitamritavarshini bhagavatim astadashadhyayini Amba Tvam Anusandadami Bhagavad Gita Bhagavad Dveshinim Bhagavad Gita Bhagavad Dveshinim Bhagavad Dveshinim. What a beautiful sloka. And then as always, everything that I'm going to share with you is the blessing from Sri Ramji. And the right truth, absolute truth is, I listened to Sri Ramji's talk, 120 times to be able to understand about 10% of it, which is what I'm presenting here. So very quickly, what Samkhya we looked at is, Samkhya is all about the right perception. And all the Vedanta scholars in the Samkhya, the way the Samkhya is defined as Samkhya-Yate Prakashayate, the correct and clear perception of the truth about the reality. And that truth, what Samkhya says is, that is Sat, Chit, Ananda, the three dimensions of it. That is, the entire truth, our existence, our true real self is that we are nothing but truth, that we are Chit, that is, we are consciousness, And then Ananda. We are nothing but the embodiments of the complete embodiments of the bliss. Complete embodiments of the bliss. And this is what even Shankara gives a detailed interpretation of Samkhya as samyakyayate prakashayate. And even Patanjali, one of the benefits of Ashtanga Yoga, which is Yoganga Anushthanat Avivekakyatehe Jnana Deeptihi, is one of the two benefits, which is Jnana Deeptihi Avivekakyatehe, or what some of the benefits that he says. That means we get the complete knowledge and we get the complete perception about the Samkhya, about who we are. And then what is not Samkhya? Samkhya is not misperception, which is that misperception about who we are, that we identify ourselves, this is finite body, finite costume, and the mind and the thoughts and the possessions that we have. And then what that does is that actually creates suffering. And the greatest metaphor in the Vedanta that is defined as Rajju Sarpa Bhranti. We mistake the rope for a snake. And then when you mistake a rope for a snake, what happens? It creates all kinds of anxiety, and we are trying to take reactive and all kinds of worries and anxiety and this stuff. So what Samkhya makes a bold declaration is that this misperception of who we are, of the reality, is the root cause of all suffering. And this is also what Patanjali says. Avidya is one of the root kleshas, the klesha mula, the wrong perception of the identity causes all kinds of misery. What Samkhya also says is that the reverse is also true. That anytime when we are in a suffering, that means, anytime we are distorted from the state of that bliss, the ananda, and that is also misperception. Any negative emotion that we have within ourselves or around us, that is also misperception. And what a beautiful, bold declaration that is. The misperception, the avidya, the wrong identity causes suffering, but reverse of all that is also true. So anytime when we look at ourselves that we are in a negative emotion of anxiety, fear, unhappiness, sad, or sense of loss, like what Patanjali defined as the five kleshas, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, rooted from asmita and avidya, all those are unreal. They are all untrue. That means we are not connected to the right perception, that Ishvara's perception. And that is the reason we get into this suffering state. And this is what we talked about in Shankara's Pratasmarana Stotram. The last line of the third verse is Rajva Bhujangamiva Pratibhashitam Vaye. So make sure that we get the right illumination to be able to discern between what is snake and what is the rope, so that we can always be joyful in your life. So now let's look at why Samkhya? Why Samkhya? So we looked at the Bhagavad Gita's the first sloka where the Bhagwan's teachings start. Bhagwan's teachings start to Arjuna. Arjuna is going on about his own dilemma, his own confused state, where he is reposed from being Rajju Sarpa Bhranti. He is actually in a dilemma where he's like, he's going through a chatter about, should I fight or not? That's the same situation that we are always presented ourselves in. Should I do something or not? Is it something that's going to be good for us or good for other people? We're always in that dharma sankata, the confused state. And then Bhagwan listens to all of this entire confused state. But Arjuna thinks that he is operating very logically. It's like, why do I have to fight? Why do I have to kill the people in front of me? Wouldn't it be better for me to go to the mountains and then meditate and leave all this property and everything? And then Bhagwan's the first sloka starts, the illumination of or in fact, it's not even it is an illumination, but it's almost like taking the avarnam or taking the smoke from our own perception. And the shloka that we looked at it, Asocha Navyasochatvam Prajnavadamsha bhashase gatasuna gatasuncha nanusochanti panditaha. The crux of this sloka or Bhagwan's message is, don't worry. Nanusochanti panditaha. Those people who are learned, who are wise, they'll never worry. They will never worry about the situations or what they would have to do. And in fact, Bhagwan even says that, while you think that you are making all these intellectual arguments from the roots of buddhi, but it's a conditioned buddhi. It's a conditioned buddhi. It's rooted in some associations and what he thought as right, or what he thought as some situations and the relationships, and even the things about what is life and what is death. I posed in the wrong identity because he was seeing things from the realm of physicality. And he's thinking that, I have to kill somebody, I have to hurt somebody. But all that stuff is not true. So what Bhagwan essentially says to all of us is that don't worry, nanasochanti. In fact, we're going to look at the last sloka from last sloka of the Bhagwan, where the teaching actually stops. I think that's about 66th verse in chapter. That also says, ma sochaha, don't fear. So it basically, the first teaching starts with, which is like, don't worry, and ends with the final culmination of the recipe, and don't worry. And of course, then there are a few other slokas that basically summarizes the entire essence. But the teaching of the Bhagwan starts from the 11th sloka in the second chapter and ends with the 66th verse, which we're going to look at in just a moment. So what it actually says is, for the learned and the wise, we don't worry about all these petty things about life, death, killing, and this action, inaction, and all that kind of stuff. And why so? How so? We're going to look in the follow-on verses. And what? This is an interesting question, even Patanjali says, because Arjuna, we're all Arjunas. We're all the warriors. We're all presented in different life situations. But at the same time, we all see different situations differently. And this is, but what Samkhya says is, the truth is only one. There is only one correct perception, the absolute perception. And that is about the self and Prakriti, that we are eternal beings, and which we are going to get into. But many of us, all the life beings, we all interpret things differently. And this is what Patanjali says. The subjective realities are many. When we look at any one situation, we all see this, from our own colored minds, based on our impressions, based on our state of being. And Patanjali Sutra that basically says is, Vastu samye, chitta beda. Chitta beda. Chitta is the image that we present. Chitta beda, tayor vibhaktaha pantaha. Tayor vibhaktaha pantaha. What it means is, the same situation is seen differently by different minds, depending entirely on their conditioning, their karma, and then their conditioning of each mind. And also, even the same person will see the same situation differently based on the time. So this is all subjective reality. Subjective reality. Sometimes when we see the same situation, we think that that's good. Sometimes in the same situation, we interpret that as bad. And two people look at the same thing and they interpret it different things. So what Bhagwan is actually saying is, even though like the same situation, Duryodhana is actually interpreting it one way, Arjuna is interpreting it in a different way, Bhishma is interpreting it in a different way, everybody is interpreting a different way, and they are trying to do this. What Bhagwan says is, don't worry, align with my perception, the truth, the Ishvara's perception. Align with that, then everything is bliss. Everything is Satchitananda. While we are doing all the things that we do, but we are always eternally be reposed in that joy. And that's what Samkhya says. And Patanjali and the yoga system is very much derived of the Samkhya. And then Patanjali added another dimension of Ishvara to Samkhya. So this is something that we have seen, as Patanjali said, which is that the same situation, but depending on our states of being, but we see it, we interpret it, and we label it differently. And many other beings also label it differently. But the whole goal of Samkhya, to be able to build the right perception, is to be able to see the way the things they are and don't have any judgments, don't have any labels about it. If you have a money, you just say that it's money. The moment it comes down to is like, is it money more, or how this money is made, and is it good money, bad money? And when it goes into lots of interpretations, and that's when we are not able to see the things that they are. And the reason for this is, it all starts from avidya and colored mind. So now, we talked about the last sloka, and this is very fascinating, how Bhagavan starts with don't worry and ends with don't worry. The teaching ends with don't worry, and then gives all the recipes of karma yoga, dhyana yoga, gunatraya vaga yoga, and all this knowledge, and then finally ends with sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja ahantvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Don't fear. Just be reposed in me. Just simply surrender to me. Me is that self within, the Purusha within. Tadatmanyam, which is like, just get reposed in the self. From the uncolored mind, keep the chitta vritti nirodha, that inner peace and outer dynamism. And then don't worry about anything. Just keep doing the things that you are doing. And do not fear. So it is like, so it's like na socha ti panditaha ma sochaha. Ma sochaha is the last teaching from Bhagavan. So let's all accept this. Let's all take a lot of comfort, but a lot of security that we have the Krishna, that inner peace within us. And then there is nothing to be worried about. Let's take this life as a very playful game and just simply keep on pursuing exuberance, and always try to get aligned into that Ishvara, so the Krishna's perception, so that we can always be joyful. Always be joyful. So now let's go look at what is self, and how we can identify ourselves with the self. So this basically answers the first question about Sankhya's first answer to it. Who am I? The right perception. So today, who am I? It immediately connects to what the mind and the sensory apparatus, it immediately allows us to perceive us with this body and this mind. And then the next one is the people around me, my family, my friends, my community, my organization, my things like that. And the more you get attached to this identity, the more you get into this roller coaster ride of Rajju Sarpa Bhranti. So now let's see how Bhagavan reveals our own true identity, so that we can take repose or take comfort being nicely settled in our own being. So the first one, what Bhagavan says is that our true identity, also known as Purusha or the self or the soul, the first thing that Samkhya says is that we are eternal, that we have no beginning or we have no end. We have no beginning and we don't have an end. And the Bhagavan says something like this. Natvevaham jatunasham natvam neme janadipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamata param. What it means is, it basically says Natvevaham jatunasham. There was never a time that neither you not exist, nor I not exist. In other words, you and I, Arjuna, you and I, we always have been there. And at the same time, the people that you're seeing in front of you, the soldiers, or even the kings, they also have been here all the time. And there is, even in any point in the future, we never cease to be. We never cease to be. Don't worry. Don't worry. And one is why is all this spirituality? In fact, the root of all the human quest for spirituality is what people wanted to understand the meaning of death. In fact, that was so profoundly expressed in Kathopanishad. Just what is death? Ramana Maharshi, the reason why he went into inquiry is because he had an experience of near-death experience. And Buddha had the same thing. He saw one person who is sick, who is decaying, and who is dead. And he was like shaken. And most of us were also stuck in the same avinivesha, that klesha of the fear of death. So most of the spiritual quest for all the human mankind is to understand what is beyond what we think as life. And how should we understand this death? And that's where Arjuna's conflict has also been, that why am I killing somebody? And he's worried that he's having to kill his own guru in the fight. And then the first, basically the disruption is like, first and foremost, dude, understand that you and I always existed. Also, the people who you think you're killing, they always exist. They always existed. They will always be there. They'll always be there. Don't worry. So just play the game. Just play the game. It's almost like a video game, right? In the video game, you go in, there's always all kinds of, killing and this stuff. Just play the game. Let's play the game in a very joyful way. I mean, do you see, most of the kids, when they play the video game, do they have any sorrow? They're like always enjoying. And I always get wondered, how are they watching these Criminal Minds and this? That's an entertainment for most of the kids. The only thing is they think that that's a video game. If you go to take this life as that same video game, and then then play it skillfully with the right principles of the dharma and this stuff. Otherwise, you get stuck in the video game for a long time. You get stuck in the video game for a long time. So, but then most of us, when this is being said, the thing is, we don't really see anything, right? We only get identified with this birth, this costume. We don't remember anything of our future or the present. Our past or the future. Because we think that the soul is nothing but our body. It's very much deep inside. When this, body leaves, even that also gone. And there are movies like Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. Just like there is only one life, one body, one costume. Let's maximize this. So we're always trying to hanker around it. And how to maximize the ride that we are getting, this one-time ride. Zindagi na milegi dobara. And Krishna says, dude, that Zindagi na milegi dobara is a wrong perception. So that's basically the second the sloka that not the second sloka, but the other dimension where the Bhagavan is trying to separate the selves, our true identity, from the body and the costume that we identify with. So the way the verse goes like this: Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitava nabuyuhu ayo nitya shashvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The last line actually says that the self is not destroyed when the body is destroyed, or it has nothing to do. The body is is born and destroyed. Body is born, is growing, and is getting decayed. But the self is separate from the body, and the self has never a birth, or never it ever dies. Ajo Nityaha is always been there, eternal, and it's Shashvatoyam Puranam. It is immortal, and it's complete, it's whole, and it's ageless. And this is what he said. But Arjuna basically said, yes, now tell me, it's starting to make sense, but can you give some examples? How do I get this into my experiential reality? How do I understand it? The greatness about Bhagavad Gita is it uses the power of repetition. Unlike the sutras, Patanjali Yoga Sutras is about never repetition. Astobam anavadyam. Whereas in Bhagavad Gita, it's like a song format. We can actually keep the same thing. We can hammer the same thing using many different artifacts. So, and Bhagavad Gita also has a lot of metaphors. So when Bhagavan starts explaining why the body and the difference between this with some metaphors, and then the next two slokas that we're going to explore are very, very popular. In fact, most of the people associate with Bhagavad Gita with perhaps these two verses. And Bhagavad Gita, often when I did my research, Bhagavad Gita means, it's something that gets played when somebody in your family dies. And then that's when everybody plays the Bhagavad Gita, and then the two verses that are being played. And it's kind of an unfortunate practice that it has become, because Bhagavad Gita is all about celebration. How do we live our life so joyfully, always be joyfully, inner peace and outer dynamism? But coming back to these two verses,
I think playing this at the last minute, it's not for the dying person. I'm sure they don't care at that point of time. I think it's for the people around them, because they're so immersed in sorrow. I think this is for them. This is my understanding. I don't think it's for the person who's departing.
I see. I think that is exactly right. I think this is what the thing is. Number one, it is being played, and I don't think people are understanding the essence of it. But I don't think it's actually being, not even if it's being played. I think what we need to do is own the essence. I think, some of the discussions that we've had about, death. Death is actually, we're often asked questions about what is the right emotion to respond in a situation of a death in the family, or death of a beloved, or could be a friend. And Sri Ramji and some of the gurus that I've been with, we immediately say, it's like, death should be a celebration. Death should be a celebration of the memories, celebration of the journey that we've had together. And it should be a sense of gratitude. But most of the times that I've seen is that this is being played as a ritual, but it is not being interpreted and own the essence.
I mean, so that applies to everything, ritualistic things we do. It's not explained. It's not just for this one. I think it's for everything we do from morning to evening, a simple prayer to everything. I think it's not explained. But I feel it is there because that is such a vulnerable time for everybody. And taking from there, it's like you're about to fall, and you can't say, instead of pulling them out, you can't say, oh, don't worry, it's okay, you'll only break few legs, it's okay, fall off. You know what I mean? So I think acknowledging the emotions at that point of time, and I think eventually everybody will get to that state of celebration. Like if we all remember our grandparents or parents who have departed, we get there. But I think every emotion at that point of vulnerable time, I think, there are communities where I think Jamaicans, they throw a huge party for the departed and for community after the death. So I think everybody will get there, but yes, awareness has to be there. I agree with that.
I think, the thing is, I completely agree with you. I think what we should be doing is be more proactive and start implementing this knowledge right from when the kids are so young.
Exactly, Srini. I was going to say same what you're saying. It is because we live in an unexamined, unprepared life. That's why this happens, because we're not taught to, to accept what is. If we are taught young onwards, my dad passed away last September. It'll be, 1 year in a few days. And my mom is devastated. She knows Bhagavad Gita. She has listened to your hymns sound like you take the same tune as the Ghantashala tune, because everybody sings Bhagavad Gita differently, right? That your voice, the way you sing, it reminds me of the one that I used to listen in India. And because I try to tell her that, Mama, everybody's gonna go, but then when you try to say these things before or after, you then come across as a cold person, because this thing that I'm saying to my mom is, maybe in a year or before my father passed away. He was not ill or anything, but it's still unpreparedness. And I think we need to do it with our children young on, so they understand, like the Tibetans do that. They have the Tibetans Book of the Dead, and they're very, certain sect anyway are very prepared. They think it's just a transition, but others are not. And I'll be quiet after that. But I agree with both of you. There is people that just, you're not prepared, and that's why they're live in the sorrow. It takes them 1 year to come out of it, and all the rituals which are supposed to kind of like help them untie themselves from the death. And in fact, if you read the scriptures deeper, the more you mourn, you're holding on to the soul that needs to make the journey, and you're holding on to their prana or their soul. So you're not letting them transition to wherever they need to go. Obviously, this is said, and I don't know what the experience of that is, but these are my understandings.
Thank you very much, Umaji. I'm so glad to have you here. And the thing here is, let me go through this. And I've had the honor of singing these two verses along with a few others for both my now ex-father-in-law in Florida, and then my dad, who passed away, with a sudden on-stage of cancer. But the way, it's my own evolution, and I think in my own experiential reality in my life, one of the biggest things right from when I was as a kid, I've always been very much trapped by this abhinivesha, the fear of death. And that used to be a big part of my life. And I think I'm sure most kids, in particular in today's life, with the amount of things that are being thrown at them, whether it is negative emotions, violence, and this and that, or viruses, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure most of the kids and most of the adults probably have been living in the fear of death. And what it means is, of course, you shouldn't be careless and this and this stuff.
Yeah, recklessness is different, right? I can't say that I'll go stand on the highway and then expect everything to be okay, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's not the dharma. That's not the dharma. But this element of interpreting death and to be able to make everybody feel confident about their being, so that they're operating life much more joyfully. But I now see so many kids around, including my own experience, right? And I always used to have, even when my kids were so young, and I used to have, a supercomputer in my brain. I used to think about all the scenarios. It was like, wow, if something happens to me, what would happen? But when my dad was passing away, the more and more it was a very painful thing, where we tried to make it as much of a celebration, as a joyful ride for the painful situation that he was in. But he didn't come to terms with it. But only in the last, about 1 week or so, he was cheerful. He was, doing it. And the night before he passed away, we were laughing and joking for about 6 hours. And there were several miracles, but I don't want to digress on it. But now, for me, my dad is always there with me. I talk to him, I play with him.
Exactly. I lost my
think-
uncle, who I was much closer to me than my own father. He was more of a father figure to me, but that was many years ago. It took me almost 1 year to not have tears rolling down my cheeks at random times when I look. Now I remember all the good things he's done, or things that I'm strong and who I am today because of all the subtle things he's taught across my entire life for me. So,
Yeah.
but then I wasn't prepared, it was, 23 years ago, but I was certainly younger and not wise, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, my mom, I have to, one of the things, because, she's been there and she reads all these things, Bhagavad Gita and all that stuff, but I think it's at the periphery. It's not about the application. And the thing is, her emotions are very valid.
Right.
What's the right word? The conditioned mind. She's like, she's been a housewife. Her world, she saw her world through my dad. And now she's alone. Her thing is, her sorrow is real, like the Arjuna's sorrow. Arjuna is the most enlightened being, but he was in the battlefield. He was going through the same dukkha. So that's what the reason why all this is created.
I think that is why you have to give the time to
For them to heal.
Yeah, you can't. I'm sure, we say everything it's available at that point of time. Like Srini ji, you had the shift between when you had the fear of death, and then you move to that shift happened in your mind. Something entered. It's like a pearl. The dust goes into the shell and it turns into a pearl. It's like that. So I think it will happen to her because of sons like you. You know what I mean? You bring that again and again. You are in a way rewiring her imprints.
Yeah.
I think even if I look at our samskaras, like, whatever we do, 13th day or whatever it is, we have nothing to keep attachments. The clothes are given of theirs, their bed is given away, they're not buried. And, on the 13th day, we put feast to call people, whatever you call it. I don't know what everybody does, but based on my experiences. So I think there is a celebration part of it as well, but it is not promoted as a celebration. It is not.
I'll be very honest with you. When I was going through my dad's ceremony, we did everything very, very traditionally.
As for rituals,
right? Rituals, I was like, I wanted to like tonsure my head and whatever the things that they were doing in the village and all that kind of stuff, I participated, right? But I was trying to understand. But what I could not understand was there was a crying competition. It's almost like whoever cried the loudest and longer is almost like, that they were being rewarded, right? That's the right way of, doing this. And these people are like, but anyway, it's not there. Let's actually get back to the routine and then we'll actually do it. So what Bhagavan basically says, this is one of the beautiful metaphors. And I always like singing this. Vasamsi jinani yada vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tada sharirani vihaya jirna anyani samyati navani dehi nayanam chindanti shastrani Nayanam dahati pavakaha nachainam kledayantyapo nashoshayati marutaha nashoshayati marutaha. So basically it brings out the two dimensions. The first one is when Arjuna is not convinced that, you told me that now the body and the self are, separate. It's like self has never had a birth, it's only the costume. So then the metaphor, I think, we all know this, just like how we change clothes whenever vasam sijirnani, when the cloth gets, worn out or torn up, as you're going from the different things, you wear different clothes to fit into different situations. That's how the self is wearing different costumes as it transitioning from what we think is one life to the other lives. The self is absolute. It is, we're going to get into the final conclusion of the Samkhya about who we are which we learned even in the Yoga Sutra, which is like Nitya-Such-Sukha-Atma. We are eternal, we're always pure, and we are representation of the bliss, and we are indivisible, we are Atma. So basically what it says is like what we wear as the costume, the self is wearing this body and the mind and this as your costume, and it changes different costumes as you're progressing through this game of life, the game of the universe. So this is the first metaphor. It is a beautiful metaphor, like, just like how you put on different clothes based on different situations as they're worn out. And this is the answer to Buddha. Yeah, when a cloth is worn out, when the body is decayed, you get new clothes, just like, you take a new cloth. And, if you outgrow your clothes, then you actually get something. So, and sometimes, you would also downgrow, if you get some, perhaps disability or some other kind of stuff, then you wear a different kind of costumes. So again, we all have to look at this body and the mind as simply a costume. And that is not our true identity. And then the next one, the Nayanam Chindanti, where Bhagwan actually goes a little bit into the soul is pure. It doesn't get touched by the fire. It doesn't get, burned by the fire, or it doesn't get, ever destroyed or get, distorted by any of the arrows, or it doesn't, you can never cut it. And, you cannot even clear the Antiope. You cannot even wet it. Or it cannot even be touched. It cannot be swayed by the wind. It cannot be swayed by the wind. So it is always pure. It will never ever get tainted by the fire or water or air or arrows, or you cannot cut it and this stuff. So the pure Nayanam Chindanti, you can never shred it, you can never cut it, you can never burn it, you cannot wet it, or you cannot sway it by the wind. This self is pure and self is indivisible. And that where he establishes, number one, what it says is like, the self is eternal. The people in front of you, people you and I always existed. It's separate from the body. So it establishes, the Bhagwan establishes the eternality or the eternal attribute of the self. And then in the follow on with the right metaphor, and then in the next verse, basically Bhagwan says that the self is always pure. It doesn't get tainted by any one of the Bhutas. And then, or even the gunas. Then when we look at the Prakriti, we will actually look at the 24 tattvas. But self doesn't get tainted by any one of them. And then, and then it's always pure and indivisible. And then finally, what is self? And that's when Sukhamatyantikam yattat buddhigrahyam atindriyam veti yatrana chavyayam chaivayam stitaschalati tattvataha stitaschalati tattvataha. One, just like what we say is yogastha kurukarmani, yoga, which is like the self is always established in this joyous state, which is always established in that inner peace and harmony, inner peace. The buddhigrahyam atindriyam. So this is where those who actually have the right intellect, the viveka, that they do not get trapped into the sensory apparatus, the drama being created by the sensory and the mind. The one is rooted in the desire. The more you play into this sensory kind of a game, the more you deviate from the self. And then you become more and more finite. What if you want to take a bite in the universe, a lot of people that I talk to, they always have this Jindagi Na Milegi Dubara. What is that movie? It's just like, I want to get the maximum joy. What do you get with the sensory apparatus? You take a small, tiny bet. What at best you can do, fall from 10,000 square feet, 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet. Or, now what these people are doing, spaceship, and you barely cross our atmosphere. But what is the dot? I mean, there is this nice Voyager picture that NASA sent us. It's called the pale blue dot. When they sent the Voyager 2, when it escaped the solar system, they turned back the camera to take a picture of our solar system. And then our Earth planet is like a small pale blue dot. Small pale blue dot.
It should be a great reminder to tell us that we are extremely insignificant. Everything that we think is like, oh my God, the sky is falling is really not true.
No, that buddhi,
that's insignificant, right? That's what it is.
Exactly. That pale blue dot. Our planet is like so insignificant.
Right. And so if a planet is so small, then think about me in Pennsylvania, invisible, right? It's like nothing. I'm a nothing.
Yeah, exactly. 4,000 square foot building. Oh, wow. What a great thing. And then, but what it's saying is, when you try to experience this infinite within the faculty of your sensory perception, with Indriya, your experience is so finite. You're like, nothing in the pale blue dot. What it says is, but when you build the right intellect, right buddhi, and you come out of this sensory apparatus to experience the world or experience the self, then you're always in that sukhamatyantikam. You'll always be reposed in that state of bliss, your true nature. Right? So that is the truth. That is the Sat. And the beautiful thing about Sat is, in the truth and bliss are one and the same. In our philosophy, only when you are reposed in the truth, that's when you are joy. But in our, kind of this material system, truth has to be confessed. We have codes, we have rules, we have laws. And it's almost like, truth is such a, you have to extract truth out of the people.
Pull it out.
Right? What Samkhya says is, shift the perspective. Truth is effortless. Truth is your very nature. You don't confess truth. You have to confess the lie. You have to work hard to concord. And the beautiful thing is, the God has given a small apparatus, the sensory apparatus in the mind, and then we are working very hard to create the lies and lies and lies and above lies. And we create a misery. And it's like Vedavyas actually says that we are willingly the self. We actually sometimes, we blindfold ourselves to have fun in this ride. The roller coaster video game ride of the ebbs of lies. And then we have to unwind ourselves. Take the blindfold off, and then we get reposed into our eternal state of bliss. So that's what Bhagavan says. This is like, that is our true nature, that you're always bliss and you're so effortless. You don't need to work any very hard. Now, right now, when we have to do meditation, it looks so painful because we are so much in the realm of the physicality. But meditation is supposed to be the effortless state, prashantavahita rahita, that effortless, joyless state. So what Bhagavan Krishna also says, yes, you have to work hard, not to work hard to connect to the truth, connect to the thing. But until you unwind, uncolor the colored mind, at least that have that Samkhya, that intellectual awareness, the buddhi, the viveka, so that you can start pursuing the journey, start heading in that journey of the prachodhyat, the realization of the truth, so that you can actually, the path becomes so easy because your intent is there, your sankalpa is there, so that you can actually get there much more quickly and efficiently. So it all starts with the Samkhya, having the right intellectual awareness of our own identity, so that our journey towards that becomes much more easier. If you don't even have the awareness, then you are going somewhere and this and this stuff, and we cannot do it. And the beautiful thing about Gita is, they did not give one journey, one path. There are infinite ways to get to that infinite realization. And Samkhya or the Jnana Yoga is one of those paths. One of those paths. So to conclude the thing, so who am I? What's the self? The attributes of the selves are, we are Nitya-Such-Sukha-Atma. We're always eternal, we're always pure, we're always blissful, we're indivisible. Whatever the distortions, the seemingly suffering, the dukkha that are happening, it's to the costume that we wear, it's to the cloth that we have, that has tears, worn out, and this, and that has some red shirt, white shirt, yellow shirt, and all that stuff. And you wear it for different situations. And you play the game. But don't maintain a distance between the costume and who you are. And that is the answer as it revealed by Bhagavan Krishna to the question, or to the Dharma Sankata that Arjuna had, which are, we are all the Arjunas and we are all the skilled warriors. And then we get reposed in that. And the last thing that Bhagavan said is like, don't worry. I'm so joyful because he told me from inside, don't worry. And I'm enjoying the ride of being worryless state. So let's conclude it. In the next session, what we will do is we will actually go look at the other dimensions, which is the Prakriti, the other, it basically starts answering the question about where am I? Where am I? And this is so fantastic, the 24 tattvas and how we can actually navigate the field around it. And there are, what did we learn in the first Bhagavad Gita session? Dharma kshetre, kurukshetre, which is the two kshetras. One is our body, the other one is the field around us. And the answer for that is there in the first sloka itself, kshetre, kshetre, dharma kuru. So we'll understand the kshetra, and then we'll also look at the journey of how to do the dharma kuru. So with that, let's conclude the session for today. Are there any comments, thoughts, questions as we wrap up today's session?
I have a question.
Guruji, go ahead.
Sorry, I think I fixed my light issue here. Okay. Recently, I heard a podcast where one of the thing they mentioned was that Tahitian language does not have a word called sorrow in their vocabulary, in their language at all. But so, and in Russia, in Russian language, there are many names for blue. So when somebody, if we show different colors of blue for them, they're able to name differently. Like, this is this blue, that blue. But somebody whom we don't know, we say this is green because that's the only closest thing name we know. So coming back to this is like, does the Tahitian people don't know the feeling of sorrow at all? So the minute we label it, does it mean that we embody it or like we recognize it? Sometimes what we don't recognize or what we don't know, like how do you bring that to here? Like, maybe it was labeled sorrow. If they had said even Arjuna's situation was also joyful, if they had told us, and I don't know. That thing made me wonder, just because the feeling doesn't have a word, so doesn't mean that it exists. Like, do I not feel it? Like, I'm
exactly. This is a fantastic question, right? It actually comes down to what Patanjali said. Vastu samye chitta vedaha tayor vivakta pantaha. Basically, it's like we all can look at the same situation and have different things, right? How do I even know that something as a cancer, as an example, right? In the olden days, there is no awareness of any labels. So basically, it's like, when something happened, they just simply went with it, right? So, but that is so insightful that there is no dictionary, there is no sorrow. So what would be interesting is the sensory apparatus has an element of pain, right? What actually, there is a famous saying. So it's like, pain is real, suffering is optional. Or sorrow is optional. which is like, if you cut because of the law of, physicality and the chemistry, I mean, there is some pain and there is some, sensory thing that is happening. But how do you react to it? It all based on what we learn, what we accumulate.
That's exactly, even though we see the moon only one side of it, we still know there is another side because it was told us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? If nobody told me that there is another side, I would have said, I thought it was it's a slice of cheese, or it was a slice of chapati or roti or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So how would, just because there's a name for that feeling or name for the thing, would I not feel it? My sensory, not feel that?
Actually, this is a beautiful thing. Actually, we have been conditioned by a lot of people, right? And we have been accumulating these impressions or labels, through our associations and in the family. Like, if you take the thing of Ramana Maharshi as an example, right? He had an abscess and whatever. But he used to look at it and he used to smile. He was like, he's like, this happened, this and this stuff. But he never had that suffering because he's always been joyful. Right? So because he had that viveka, but we need to do this experiment. Like, there's a beautiful, I don't know if this is the right metaphor or not. We all seen this Jungle Book movies or Lion King movies and so on and so forth. When a lion, the baby lion, when it grows up with, Balu and the bears, or the Mowgli goes with them, he thinks that he's one among them. Is nature, because he acts like them. It's because of the conditioning. And the same two people, right? It's like there is an English movie or a Hindi movie, famous comedy movie, like a Judwa or the twins. Your conditions basically we are acting with more of what we make in here. The label somebody says, why do we think, $1 million is good? Because somebody told us $1 million is good. So I think we probably have to, even Ramakanji always says, right, that one slide that we have, which is based on colored mind. I mean, even the think about this, right? When you look at somebody, we think that somebody is beautiful, just by the very nature. How do you define the beauty? It's because, something, there is probably some exuberance that kind of comes in.
There's some standard, obviously. There is some standard, obviously.
Yeah. Somebody says...
but I'm saying, so Tahitian people don't even understand Arjuna's Vishada. Because that word is not even there for them. So they're thinking, like, for me, I felt, you said, I was so afraid of dying. I never have that feeling. Never, even as a child, never had, whatever it is. I'm going to die. I have fallen from probably 10 trees, broken teeth and things. So seems like I don't have that fear. So do I not understand that fear? I do understand that fear, but not to that level. Probably I wouldn't feel it to the sensory organs but I can understand, but I can't feel your fear of death. You know what I mean? So
actually, I don't know. The fear, when you have it, I think there's one dialogue that Ramakanji said in one of the things. It needs to be Vishada Yoga. You have to prosecute to the level of the depth where, the way my mind prosecutes is like, what does it mean for me if I do not live? And then I was concocting all the scenarios, like, what happens to my kids? What happens to this? I would not even kid. Actually, this is a fact. When my brother and I, we were the closest people, because I think, we also had a loss in the family, because our younger brother died when he was so young. So we were all kind of caught up in this law of impermanence. I remember when we were growing up as kids, me and my brother used to sleep outside, and we used to, look into the sky. And then both my brother and used to have competition, which is like, we could not bear the sight of like my dad or my mom or even my brother or any one of them dying for whatever the reason. So we both used to pray that I hope I would be the first one. I hope I would be the first one, because that is the level of the yoga that we were equating, because we could not imagine the sight of my dad being not there, or my mom being not there, or my brother being not there.
But I think it's the impression made of death around you, because that's not the impression I have got grown. I've seen death since probably around
Could
5 years
be,
old. It is.
could be
Maybe
even
the
now.
impression you have is that's what made you fearful of them. Like, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's like eating the bad dish. Your probably your mom doesn't know how to cook it. Doesn't mean that the dish is bad. Maybe you need to eat the dish later on, cooked by a good cook or something. I'm not saying your mom is a bad cook, but I'm just saying, I'm saying that's the first impression which happens, especially as kids. Kids are blank sheet. And the more they say, and also it's not explained by parents in the household, right? What's happening? How are you feeling? The emotional aspect is never taken care. So,
but it's not the parents. It's not actually. Let me actually. Sorry.
samaja, right? Like,
The samaja. But the thing here is, even now, right? It's not like my parents or anything. Everybody was going through the grief. Everybody was going through the same thing. Everybody thought this was the same thing. And I was the same thing when I was growing up. My kids, now I see my kids going through the same thing. Even their pet, small pet dies, and they are like in an emotional, kind of a grief. So this is now part of the entire thing. And I'm sure all of us, right? We cannot probably imagine the sight of, but now the more that I now understand it, I actually is like, I can, or at least, and I think I'm a lot more prepared now. I'm glad that this deep impressions, I went through it. So that now when this comes as an eventuality, all costumes are ephemeral. The body is ephemeral. The soul is eternal. So when we know that is ephemeral, why are we even worried about that? But I don't think this truth is being embraced holistically by almost all of us. Almost all of us. I mean, if I were to ask any one of our friends and talk about, like, can you imagine, that your dad being not there, or your mom being not there, or your siblings being not there, or your own kids not being there? And then that's like a heartbroken moment. But that's the truth. That's the truth of the ephemerality. But the other truth is, the truth is only limited to the costume. But my dad has always been there. Your dad has been there. My siblings have been there. The only thing that I tried even rationalizing it, is like, but the population is increasing ever. So it's like, that means, what are the total number of souls? Samkhya, actually, there is a difference between Samkhya and Vedanta. Vedanta basically says like there is only one soul. But anyway, let's not go to the Vedanta thing. But Samkhya says like, all of us are a soul. Then I always had the question, right? At one time there was only 1 billion people. Now there are 7 billion. So how did the 1 billion souls became 7 billion souls? So that means there is some kirikiri here, right? Something there. But then I kind of realized that the soul is not limited to just the self is not limited to just the human beings, right? It just comes down to
You're counting the water drops from an ocean.
Exactly. I mean, it's like everything is
the water is all one.
Exactly. This entire thing is, even the rock is also a manifestation of the self. So and then the Heisenberg scientific principle, right? Energy and mass, are constantly mutating, flowing into one dimension to the other, but the total is constant. So that is actually so what I've also realized is the people who are studying deeper physics, the people who are studying astronomy, when they go deeper, they become silent. And that's when they actually come very close to the Advaita or the Samkhya kind of philosophy. And then now there is an existence of dark matter. And they cannot quite explain it, but now this is like there is a dark matter that's powering all these things. Sometimes we refer to that as Shiva, that it is not, that cannot be seen, that's all pervasive. So the beautiful thing here is, I think, Savita, sorry for the thing is, while where some people have this perception of the fear of death or not, right? When they're thinking, but the real thing that we're all caught at some level is that we grieve. We cannot handle the realm of physical separation in a graceful way. And in fact, when we go to the temple, most of us are actually, my mom basically says like, please, make sure that all of us live life, happily and this and stuff. And first of all, puja is purate jayate iti. You shouldn't be asking anything. It's an expression of your fullness. And you should never be asking anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
I
And then
told you
we have to find
It's
it.
yeah.
What do we know what is good for us? When if you believe that omniscient and omnipresent expression of the God, why should we even ask anything? Right? Because
You're asking
all-knowing.
the process to be shunted to something that we like, and that's not how it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But I think now you just go there, be quiet. If you are doing your rituals, just enjoy the process, create a positive ambience, celebrate it, eat laddus, whatever you want. And then don't worry about, if you eat laddus, what is going to do to the cholesterol. But it doesn't mean that, always eat laddus. You should actually do it. I think we just have to treat it more like a game. I think this is the Jnanapata. This Jnanapata is very intellectual, it's almost like a piercing through the knowledge. And then there are other things like the karma yoga, and then just subscribe to the path of selfless action and just keep on working, and then Mai Sarvani Karmani, and see the divinity in this stuff. That's another patha, or bhakti yoga. But all the things should have to lead with the same essence, that we don't worry. Don't let this costume be an obstacle for our realization of our true nature. That's Satchidananda. So let's conclude that with that here. Thank you as always. Thank you for the wonderful satsang. Everybody, sit comfortably, spine erect. Let's chant Om 3 times to connect with the Trinity energy within us, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the creative, sustaining, and the transformation power within us. And shift your awareness from the navel area to the chest and to the head area. Take a deep breath. One more time. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We wish everybody to be happy. We wish everybody to be free of sorrow and illness. Wish everybody to see only auspicious and joyful things, and let there be peace everywhere. This wonderful thought, rub your palms, channel the fire and love of knowledge of your eyes to give us the right perception, the Samkhya perception, to see the things the way they are. Divyam dadamide chakshuhu. Thank you all for sharing this wonderful evening with us. And with this beautiful thing, let's connect again. And Savita ji, I'll reach out to you separately. Let me stop the recording.